Hello, my name is Lorne and welcome to this Ask Me Anything. I've been involved in the cybersecurity community since I was 11 years old. I am neurodivergent and I am an avid gamer. So I'm going to be asking or answering questions on all of the above. First, I just want to say a little bit about myself. So I'm a recent graduate. I studied computer science and philosophy at uni. Now I work for the Hacking Games, who are hosting this event. The Hacking Games is building a recruitment platform called Haptai, where we're looking to assess unconventional sources of skill in order to recruit unconventional young cybersecurity talent. This is something that I've had a lot of personal experience with. After leaving uni, I was very well prepared for a job in cybersecurity, but I could not pass the personality tests that companies make you complete. And I realized that this was probably, fingers crossed, because of my neurodivergence and not because I just generally suck at personality tests. And I was kind of stuck for months and months applying to all these jobs, all of whom I'm seeing online. The companies are saying, help, we need more cybersecurity people. And I'm applying and I'm never getting to talk to a real person. So I know how difficult it can be applying to cybersecurity jobs. It's an awesome industry, but it's so difficult to get started in it. So I'm going to be talking a lot about that, and also just generally about myself and about gaming. Okay, another question. Do you have any tips for attacking those psych tests? I'm not sure I'd pass one either. Okay, so I could go on for hours just about these psychometric testings. For anyone interested, there's this really cool book called The Algorithm that basically talks about how awful these tests are. They're not good. They don't do what companies need them to do. And I'm sympathetic to companies. If you look at a company like IBM, they get millions of job applications every year. I recognize they don't have the resources to take an individual look at every single person. I get that. But these psychometric tests don't work. They don't work for neurodivergent people, first off. Because what they're trying to do is they're trying to make sure you think the way that they want you to think. And that's generally a pretty neurotypical way of thinking. I'm not sure I'm the best person for giving tips on how to pass them. I never have. But I think a lot of it is, a lot of companies want you to succeed. I'll say especially government organizations, when they give psychometric tests, they're very explicit with these are the character traits we're looking for. They'll have fancy names, like responding under pressure or this or this. They'll tell you up front, these are the character traits we're looking for. So I found it quite helpful, I guess, to look at those as I was completing the assessments and think, which of these answers to this test actually demonstrates the thing that they have told me that they're looking for. Okay, looking at other questions. Do you need a certification to get started or even get a job? So a lot of job listings are going to list 5 certifications. First off, most of them are prohibitively expensive for entry-level talent. It's insane. No one's going to spend £1,000 before they even have an entry-level job. That's not possible. If you feel like you have to do a certification, I'm a big fan of the CompTIA Security Plus. It's £200, so it's still not super accessible, but I think it's a great base introduction to to how computers work and then the basics of cybersecurity. And there's really great free resources for it. So there's this guy, Mike Myers. Yeah, his name is Mike Myers. And he does free Security Plus YouTube videos. And they're super easy to follow, free resource, can't recommend it enough. Companies do currently require certifications. It really sucks because I don't think that's fair on entry-level talent. And I don't think it says much more than that you can memorize answers to questions, or, it doesn't show that you can actually use the tools needed, or that you have, the skills required to succeed long-term in the industry. That's something that at the Hacking Games we're trying to change. We're trying to shift away from this focus on certifications for entry-level talent. I think, if someone's 10 years in the industry, sure, it makes sense to have like a badge of they can do X, Y, and Z, but you can't ask that of, people just leaving uni, or people who, haven't even gone to uni. It's not fair, and it's just not a reasonable ask. Okay. If I'm not that technical, are there still roles and types of jobs in cyber that I could explore? So yes and no. There are a bunch of non-technical cybersecurity roles out there. Typically, though, they're not entry level. So that's actually the kind of work that I was super interested in when I was looking for a job. Is I was really interested in cyber, like policy advisory, for example. And what you'll find is that they don't want to hear from a 20-year-old about policy advisory. They want to hear from like a 40-year-old who's been in the industry for a really long time. But there are entry-level jobs out there. Typically, you find them in government and like governance organizations, rather than in the private sector, but they are out there. You could also look at a job like cybersecurity consultancy, which might still require some technical skills, but might be more focused on like policy, governance, implementation of policies, that kind of side. They're out there, these non-technical jobs, but it is a largely technical industry, and that's something that you're going to have to be comfortable with if you want to, go into the industry. Okay. How does being neurodivergent influence your capabilities or approaches to cyber tasks or challenges? So I would say it currently influences me by stopping me from being high. No, I would say that I never want to say that being neurodivergent is like a superpower, because I hate that phrasing. But I will say that, I'm ADHD, I'm autistic. I'm really, really good at honing in on like one thing and doing that one thing for a really long time, and kind of not losing that passion or that like drive to just keep learning in that area. And cybersecurity is an industry that is always changing. Like if you want to be an accountant, you can become an accountant and you're kind of done. I'm not an accountant. I'm not sure how true that is, but you get what I mean. It's kind of, there's nothing new happening. If you want to do cybersecurity, you have to be comfortable with the fact that the standards are constantly changing. The latest threats are constantly changing. It's a very responsive field where, defense does one thing, attack does another, and they respond to each other back and forth. It's constantly growing. I feel that neurodivergent people are well equipped to deal with that, at least in myself and, my peers that I've talked to that are in cybersecurity and neurodivergent. They find that really, really rewarding, that constant like push to learn more, that some other people might find quite tiring. Okay, have I gotten any feedback as to why I failed those tests? Yeah. What I'll get is I'll be told on these psychometric tests, oh, you aren't confident enough, or you don't show leadership skills enough, or you don't respond well enough. They'll just tell me I haven't met a certain criteria. And I'm sat there thinking, I'm plenty confident. I'm on a video right now talking to a whole 18 people. I'm plenty confident. I used to run an ethical hacking club. I can do leadership. I can do all of these things. The issue isn't that I don't have those soft skills they're looking for. The issue is that my way of understanding and answering these psychometric test questions means that the indicators of success that they're looking for aren't demonstrated. Like, I'll read a question. I remember this one question I got, and I think this is insane. I was given a scenario, and this was for a government job, of like, your manager hasn't replied to your emails for 2 days and hasn't come into work. Do you A, contact the manager on their personal phone, B, email your manager's manager, or C, take on your manager's workload? And it's like, well, that really depends. I don't think there's a right answer there. And, you know, I'd love to write a paragraph about what I think I should do, but they don't let you. It's a single tick. And I just don't feel that that really represents anyone. What we're trying to do at the Hacking Games, right, or with our platform, is we still ask kind of psychometric style questions, but they're open-ended and they take an open-ended response. You're not forced to pick like one of 3 scenarios where we then assume that because you said this, you must mean that. Because I just don't think that represents everyone's thinking. Okay, what games do you love? I feel like I may have missed, which ones helped you the most in your cybersecurity journey? So yeah, I did say I was a gamer. I'm not a like first person shooter kind of person. I'm super into puzzle games. If anyone's heard of Blueprints, that is currently my absolute favorite game. I also love kind of cozy games like Stardew Valley, and I like kind of open world games like Mario Odyssey, Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild. I like games that give you a lot of freedom to kind of do what you want to do. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that playing video games means you can hack, right? No one's buying that. But this thing that I'm really trying to champion at the moment is that I do genuinely believe that people who regularly game have certain skills that lend themselves to the cybersecurity industry. And the least controversial way of taking that is that when someone applies to a job, they put on their CV like, I play football. And then HR looks at that and they goes, plays football so he can work in a team. He, you know, shows up on time regularly for a commitment, these kind of things. If I put, I play Valorant, HR goes, what is that? That's a really weird thing to put, red flag this person, you know. I don't think gaming is treated the same as other hobbies. And I think that gaming can actually indicate, you know, soft skills the same way any other hobby does. That's one thing. The kind of stronger claim that I'm making is actually that there's a lot of tie-ins to skills in gaming and skills in cybersecurity. So first off, there's the obvious stuff. Like people who mod games or people who create cheats are actively, you know, deobfuscating code and figuring out exploits and writing their own, you know, automated stuff, which is cybersecurity. People just don't call it that, but that's what it is. And then also, you know, there's just stuff like most 10-year-olds probably aren't doing much on a computer from a technical perspective, but a 10-year-old that's like downloading games has to at least be, you know, involved with the technical specifications for computer. They're introduced to technology at an earlier age. And then there's stuff like, if you play a game obsessively, you know, that level of persistence, problem solving, you know, let's say it's a super competitive game, that strategy, you know, if you play a game like Civ 6, that like war, like scenario gaming mindset is like exactly what people look for in cybersecurity. They just don't know that it's a skill demonstrated by a game like Civ 6. So that's what we're trying to change. Fish has said that not all companies ask for expensive certifications. That's very true. There are a lot of companies out there that they get it. You know, they understand that not everyone can get those certifications, or maybe they understand that those certifications aren't the best measure of talent. Absolutely, that's true. You can keep searching for those companies. That's very fair. I think what can happen with big companies, you know, like big corporate companies that are looking to hire cybersecurity people, is HR says to the cybersecurity guys like, oh, what skills do you need? And, you know, they give an answer, and then HR Googles what that means, and they find reference to some certifications. So that's what they put on the job listing. And there's no understanding of what they're demanding of an applicant there. Kara asks, what skills would you actually require in order to do well in cybersecurity? Good question. What makes people stand out? First off, the cybersecurity industry is so broad. It's kind of, this is overstating it, but I feel like kind of any skill set can fit into cybersecurity. You know, if you're, you know, looking at like red team, penetration, testing, that side of things, that's one side of things. If you're looking at blue team, that's another set of skills. I once had it explained to me as like, when you're walking along the beach and you see someone's built like a really cool sandcastle, and maybe they've propped stuff up with wooden sticks and they've, you know, done stuff in a really intricate way. Are you the person that wants to add to that structure, or the person that wants to knock it down? And that's kind of can indicate the kind of mindset that you have when it comes to cybersecurity. You know, there's some universal literal skills. You want to be probably good at scripting. You know, learn Python, learn Bash. If you have to learn any languages, those would be them. In my opinion, at least. You know, and there's problem solving is always going to be part of it. But there's just such different roles in cybersecurity. Someone who's like a SOC analyst is very much looking at the constant like management of, is there an anomaly? Is there an alert? Is this behavior unusual? It's a very specific mindset that's very different to someone that's looking at a system and going, how can I manipulate this? How can I take advantage of that? Different mindsets, different skills. I kind of think there's a lot of different ways to get into the world of cybersecurity. What's one thing you wish someone told you at the start of your journey that could save beginners a lot of pain or wasted time? First off, don't delete your mum's registry files on her work computer. I would say that would have saved me a fair bit of money and pain. Don't mess, you know, explore. Don't mess with stuff you don't understand at a young age. It has consequences. Be careful too. You know, at like 15, I definitely did a couple things that in hindsight were not safe or particularly legal to have done. And I think I was lucky that there weren't consequences for that. You know, you have to keep in mind that you can go very quickly from exploration and kind of learning to, oh, like somebody's going to be upset with me now. What else? I never really got into capture the flags and like online platforms, and I regret it. I think tools like Hack the Box, Try Hack Me, I think they're so valuable. I think it's a shame that they, you know, have these expensive subscription policies and so on, but their free stuff's still really useful. And I think that's a resource I wish I'd used when I was younger because it's so cool. How do I pick between red team and blue team? I'm confused. Okay, so while not every cybersecurity job goes into red team and blue team, it's kind of the thing I was talking about earlier with the sandcastles, right? Which is a really reductive way to say it. But essentially, are you the person that wants to defend? Do you want to be reactive, or do you want to be like aggressively active, I guess? There's no need to choose at a very early stage. Entry level, you know, you'll often see jobs like just, you know, cybersecurity analyst, and you could go do that for a couple years and then go into whatever you wanted. You know, there's no pressure to choose. And there's also, you know, roles that I personally would consider to not fall within red team or blue team. They could, but stuff like digital forensics, it technically falls under blue team, but I would say, you know, it's not defensive, it's explorative. I think digital forensics is so cool. Or someone that's into like vulnerability research. So looking at the, you know, current malware that's out there, current vulnerabilities out, finding new ones, looking at current ones. That I would say it's on the edge of red team, but it's slightly different. There's a whole variety of things out there. I don't think that was super helpful. I'm very sorry. How do you actually learn to do more technical things like hacking without actually breaking the law? I'm repeating myself here, but platforms like Hack the Box, Try Hack Me. I used to use Hack This Site when I was really young. I think it was called. There's so many platforms out there. There's so many capture the flags. Some of them are beginner friendly, some of them aren't. But as long as it's, you know, a large organization, the worst that can happen of you joining a capture the flag is you do really badly. And that doesn't matter. No one's watching. No one is recording that for your CV. I think getting stuck in, just getting involved, trying something is so important. You can read all the theory in the world, but having an actual practical understanding of how a computer works, how networks work, how it all fits together, and how you can actually interact with these things, from a cybersecurity perspective is super important. I'd also say if you want to learn more technical stuff, it's not essential, but I'd recommend installing like Kali Linux if you haven't already. There are free virtual machine, softwares out there. I think I used VMware back in the day. And, so it's all totally free. Get yourself Kali Linux, and from there, you can install a bunch of free cybersecurity tools, things like Wireshark or Nmap. They'll generally, if a tool isn't totally free, it will at least have a community version that is free. And just play with them, see what they do. There's a lot of really cool tools out there that can do really fun things. And I just say throw yourself in. Okay. What's the implication of AI on entry-level roles in cyber? Okay. Maybe I'm optimistic, but I don't think that AI is a threat to entry-level cybersecurity talent. I consider myself an AI, let's say, skeptic. I think it can be useful, but I'm waiting for it to do all the things it's been promised to do. And I think that what's going to happen is AI is going to give us some pretty sick tools. Think, for example, with digital forensics, when you're looking at a massive database, AI is going to help you search that database and, highlight anomalous data or data with specific flags in. It'll be a useful tool, but that's all it is, a tool. You still need someone who understands computers and cybersecurity to operate that tool. So I think it'll possibly make entry-level jobs maybe a little less hard or technical, but those jobs are still going to be there. At the very least, in order to get your, senior penetration tester at your company, you need a junior penetration tester first. People need to grow into these more senior advanced roles. And the industry will recognize this. They can't just never hire a young person. So AI will be a useful tool, and I don't think it's a threat in the long run to cybersecurity jobs. Other questions? How do you feel about hacker conferences or camps? Personally, I love the knowledge, but the big conferences are also overwhelming. So I feel that. I do not like crowds, and I hate networking. Autistic, I don't like that stuff. I find it incredibly stressful. Even though I was involved in the community very actively online, I didn't attend a cybersecurity conference until I was, I think, 20. The idea of going to one made me feel physically sick. And, I know a lot of people that feel similarly. It's scary. They're really useful tools with really amazing people. I will say that the cybersecurity industry, from my experience, is one of the most friendly, welcoming industries. I think that there's very little competition between people for jobs. There's so many jobs out there that people can afford to be friendly and supportive. And so when you go to these conferences, people are nice. They're nice conferences. It's still scary. And I'd say, if you just can't work up the nerve to go to a conference like that, ideally go, but if you can't, don't. There's so many other ways to connect with people, especially online. Cybersecurity, you will connect with people online. Places like Discord communities exist. You can reach out. It's, how I got to talking to a lot of people, and how I found a couple mentors early on was just going, hey, can you help me? I know this, but I don't know that. What can I do about that? It's what it is. It's also worth flagging that some of the cyber conferences out there are super expensive, but if you look, they'll have student or young person discounted or free tickets. So don't look at a conference and go, I can't afford that. It's possible that there's a way to get you in. Okay. What's your take on bug bounty programs? How realistic is it to expect to get paid if you're a beginner? I've never used a bug bounty site. I have heard less positive things. One of the downsides of signing an NDA when you submit a bug to a company, right, is they can then proceed to not fix that bug, and you're just stuck knowing that something is horribly insecure. And I definitely know a couple, things that have not been secured that should have been secured, and the company's not going to do anything about it. That said, if you're talented, why not go for it? I mean, look at, I've forgotten his name, but we work with I think it's Dylan. Dylan's a very talented young person that we have in our cybersecurity, the hacking games community. And he's Microsoft's #1 bug finder. He's young and he got into it, because he got involved in cybersecurity at an early age, and he definitely makes good money from doing this. It's possible if you've got the skills, and there's no harm in looking. It can't hurt. I don't think your average person starting out though is going to make an income from bug bounties. It's a hobby, it's a fun thing to do, and it's good practice, but just go and get a job if you can. Are VPNs insecure? How true is that myth? I mean, what does insecure really mean, right? So, first off, anything that promises security and is free, you kind of have to ask yourself, why is it free? And sometimes the answer is because if they're not getting money, the thing they're getting is your data. But that's something that, I was told a good few years ago, and nowadays we have a bunch of reputable VPNs. Seems secure to me. I'll wait for the other foot to drop. It doesn't mean what you're doing is private. It just means that it's not traceable to you, in theory. So, take from that what you will. Do I need a uni degree to get into cybersecurity? Currently, a lot of places will want a degree. Doesn't have to be a cybersecurity degree. Anything technical is generally, accepted. I think that's changing. What we're hearing at the hacking games is that a lot of companies actually aren't happy with the level of education given by cybersecurity degrees. Companies feel like actually the knowledge taught isn't applicable to an entry-level job. And so what we're trying to do is make it so that candidates can apply for these jobs without a degree. And there definitely are currently jobs out there that don't require a degree, but they aren't as common as they should be. If you don't have a degree, you're young and you want to get into cybersecurity, I will say there are quite a few apprenticeships. I know Warwick used to do a degree apprenticeship, actually. I don't know if they still do. But cybersecurity apprenticeships, I think, are a pretty good way to go. You get paid and you learn. And because it's an apprenticeship, you're not expected to really know anything at the beginning. I haven't gone through it myself, but from what I've seen looking online, it seems like a really great system. Fish says, if it's free, you are the product and not the customer. Yes, exactly. With most things. There are some nice tools out there that are free because people are nice, but there's a lot of stuff out there that is free so that a bunch of people use it to benefit whoever's running that software. How much do apprenticeships or other cybersecurity roles pay, if I happen to know? I don't know about apprenticeships, but they pay, which, is better than a degree, which does the opposite. Cybersecurity roles, off the top of my head, I'd say that an entry-level job could get you between 22K to 40K. It's really variable. It depends on your region, of course. If you're in London, you're going to earn more. But there's other cybersecurity hotspots. It's not just London. And from what I've seen, you know, I'm not a senior person in cybersecurity, but when I look on job sites, I'm seeing between 50 and 70K for like significant experience. So it pays pretty well. If you're in the US, it pays insanely well. So congratulations if you're American. But here in the UK, I'd say it's a reliable pay. I mean, the average UK salary is, I think, 30 something K. So you could already be earning more than that as a graduate. But don't do cybersecurity for the money. You know, I don't think someone would. It can be difficult to get a job to begin with. There's easier paths. Cybersecurity is a really intense industry. It's not always the case, but there are going to be times probably where you're working very hard, or you're working very late, or it's just a very stressful time. And you should only work this job if you love it. Only work it if you really get something from doing it, because it's a lot. If you could invent one superpower, what would make cybersecurity 10 times easier? Oh, that would make cybersecurity 10 times easier, what would it be? The ability to trace a person according to anything that they've put online. Horrific security implications. But it sure would make things easier from a cybersecurity perspective. If you could see, you know, an activity and go, right, that's Sandra, I know who's doing that. It would be cool. Otherwise, like mind reading, similar kind of vibe if you could mind read over the internet. What gave you and gives you confidence to pursue a career in cyber? Firstly, as I said before, it's a welcoming industry. For a while, I looked at law as a career. Less welcoming industry, I will say. You know, in cybersecurity, it feels like people are interested in the fact that you do the same stuff. They want to talk to you about it. They want to hear about you. They want to teach you more. That gave me a lot of confidence as a very shy kid. I felt very supported and very encouraged. What else gives me confidence? Just my general blind confidence that I have. You know, at 16, I started an ethical hacking club, despite I wasn't in a position to really run something like that. But I think if you throw yourself into something, you get there, right? And I think that I've been saying it a lot in this session, but there's really no harm in trying. You know, no one's going to kill you if you apply for a job and you don't get it. That's something actually I wanted to bring up as well, is, in my opinion, the requirements in cybersecurity job listings are insane. It'll say, you know, must have 2 years experience with this, 3 years experience with that, entry-level job, you know, must be super proficient in these 5 programming languages. And for a while, I wasn't applying to jobs like that because I'd look at the job description and I'd go, oh, well, I'm not qualified. I shouldn't be applying to this job. I talked to my friend who was in the same position as me, and she said, oh, I just applied to them anyway, which was insane to me, because why do you apply for something you're not qualified for? You know, but that confidence benefited her. She got a job, and she got a job that on paper she wasn't really qualified for, because a lot of the times what's listed as an absolutely essential requirement really isn't. So sometimes that just blind confidence helps. Apply to jobs that you aren't qualified for. You know, don't take the mick, don't apply for a job that requires 10 years experience, but apply for one that requires 2. If you think you've got the skills, go for it. It can't hurt. You know, no one's gonna punish you if you actually apply for a job you're not fit for. But it can open up some really good pathways. Some youngsters may turn into the wrong directions, e.g. criminal hacking. What is your view on how they got on the wrong path and how would you prevent it? So That's kind of the big thing that we're concerned with at the hacking games, right? Is, one sec, just checking the time. Here's how we describe it. One of the most common paths for kids to get into cybercrime is through gaming, right? You start gaming at an early age. Let's say, you know, a kid plays Fortnite and he's 12 and he wants to win more. So he goes onto a cheat forum to download cheats. Then he realizes, hey, actually, this is pretty interesting, pretty easy. Let me try my hand at this. Then you've got a young kid engaged in writing code that, you know, exploits flaws in a program that's talking about this online in a cheat forum. And places, you know, like big fancy companies aren't looking at that, but cyber criminal gangs are. And what we're seeing is cyber criminal gangs are grooming young children on these, you know, cheat platforms. And they're saying, hey, it's so cool that you can do that in Fortnite. It's so cool you can do that in CSGO or Valorant. Can you do it here? Can you do this? Can you do that? And these young children who aren't intending to break any laws or do anything malicious are getting pulled in by a welcoming community that values their gaming skills, unlike most of society, and rewards them with cash, which always feels good when you're 12, you know? And these kids can end up in really messed up situations. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to meet these kids where they're at the same way that cyber criminal gangs are. At the moment, kids aren't rewarded for gaming. It's seen as a waste of time. It's seen as a bad thing. And, you know, it can be bad. There's such a thing as too much video games, right? But we want to reach out to young kids and say, hey, we think it's really cool that you do this. We think you're really talented. Keep it up, you know, talk with us and we'll help you get into this industry. You'll make money. It'll be safe and legal so that these kids don't feel like their only option is a cyber criminal gang. One sec. What do you think about hacking / cybersecurity is portrayed in media? Okay, so I think famously hacking is generally portrayed really, really, really badly in most TVs and movies. I will say, firstly, if you're looking for good representation of cybersecurity, I recommend one book, which is The Cuckoo's Egg. I can't remember who it's by, but it's a real account of this guy. I think his name's like Connor Stoll. Awesome dude who was a astronomer, I want to say, who basically found this one anomaly in his university system and ended up tracing it all the way back to like a KGB operation. It's an insane true story. It's not a particularly technical book. I'd recommend it to anyone who just wants cool hacking media. The other kind of universally recommended depiction of hacking is in the TV show Mr. Robot. I've not seen it, but I've always had good things. My favorite depiction of hacking in media is there's this one Brooklyn Nine-Nine episode, which has the most horrific, nonsensical, just gibberish pretending to be, you know, hacking terminology. And it made me so mad. And then at the end of the episode, you find out that it's because the guy that's pretending to recount what the hackers are doing actually doesn't know cybersecurity. And so he's just making it all up. And that was very cathartic. So I love that episode. Yes, The Cuckoo's Egg by Clifford Stoll. It is in the chat. I recommend it. It's not a long read. It's really, really cool. True story. And just to elaborate on it a little bit more, it came at a time, I think it was 1986, where cybersecurity wasn't taken seriously. It wasn't really a thing in the way it is now. And so this poor guy is trying to reach out to like military organizations and say, hey, you know, you've been breached. And these guys just aren't listening to him. It's an absolutely insane story. I really, really recommend it. I've seen a recommendation for Scorpion, which I haven't seen. Just looking for other questions. I don't currently see new questions, so do repeat yours if I've missed it. What game are you currently addicted to? So like I said, Blueprints. It's like a puzzle game. I think it's so fun. I think it requires skill. I mean, so in the game, right, and I will cut myself off in a second because otherwise I'll talk for the rest of the hour. But there's a new language invented in the game with completely different grammar, and you have to translate a letter written in this language. And it's just completely different to how English is structured or understood. And I finished translating this letter, and I just remember thinking, in no other hobby does something like this come up. This kind of skill of uncovering this hidden thing, decoding it, that doesn't come up in golf. You know, I think there's something very special about games, be it video games or board games, that really encourages a kind of problem solving that you just don't find in many hobbies. I think it's criminally overlooked, you know, in recruitment. Anyone that's played a board game like Risk knows that there's a lot that goes into it. Have you ever hacked anything yourself outside of Hack the Box or platforms like that? Not intentionally, or, you know, when I was 15, I really wanted access to a bunch of GCSE textbooks I didn't have access to. So I thought it was very, very valid to get access, let's say. And it's only in hindsight that I recognized that wasn't me gaming like a little system. That was me doing something that I don't know if it would have been illegal, but it was certainly not allowed. So yes. And you know, it helped my GCSEs, but I can't recommend, you know, that kind of activity. How would your platform be similar to actual gaming, but for cyber? So at the moment, we're just in our MVP, right? So we're just building the most basic version of what we're eventually going to offer to people. So we don't actually give people a game to play. What we do is we ask them to list the games that they currently play. We have a list of 45 games, but we're constantly expanding it. And we say, you know, so let's say someone plays Valorant, Balatro, and Magic the Gathering. We have a set of questions specifically designed for each game. We use an LLM basically to respond to your answers. LLM doesn't do the scoring. It's just a way of gathering information in a responsive manner. And the questions will be stuff like, in Magic the Gathering, do you prefer the strategy of actively, you know, playing a game, or do you prefer building a deck? For people that don't know what Magic the Gathering is, it's like a deck builder. So you construct your own competitive card deck to play against someone. You know, so we'll ask questions like that, or we'll ask, what's your go-to strategy in Magic the Gathering? So I'd say, I play mono red. I like playing really aggressively and overwhelming the enemy. We ask those kind of questions to get an understanding of the kind of cybersecurity role that would best suit you. You know, someone that's really, really into the team elements of Counter-Strike, Valorant, Fortnite, etc., is going to be better suited to some roles compared to someone who's really, really into social games. God forbid, you know, they're like Among Us, or Werewolf, or Town of Salem. Someone like that might be suited to, you know, the social engineering side of red teaming compared to someone that might be really good at incident response. Okay. I'm just going to scroll up, see if I've missed. What one project would you recommend to beginners? So recently I helped run a workshop at Warwick Uni, and I got talking to this amazing professor at a university, and she was talking about, what project can I recommend to my students that will capture their interest and also look good on a CV. And we started talking about modern games, which sounds silly, but we were talking about how if there's a game you like, particularly a PC game, because those are easiest to, modify, is there a project that you can work on that you're going to have a lot of fun doing because it's about your favorite game, that could deobfuscate the code and then, make modifications to stuff in a very complex manner? Or is there something that you can do there? That kind of project, I think, would be very cool and interesting. If anyone's a fan of Mario Odyssey, there's been some insane modding. So Mario Odyssey is played on the Nintendo Switch. Nintendo famously doesn't like anyone touching their stuff. But the modding community for Odyssey have now, got the ability to play multiplayer, which was never a capability in the game. So the fact that that can be done is a real demonstration of skill. Other projects would just be, I would say, anything that interests you. There's all the classical stuff, simulate your own city, simulate your own blah, 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 right? If you Google, there's like the 5 common projects that you'll see for cybersecurity. I always struggled to get particularly involved with those because they didn't quite pique my interest. I was always super into digital forensics. And so for me, a really fun project was like a parser for large data sets. Which is why, by the way, I recommended earlier learning a language like Python, which is good at handling big data. I've seen people say, do I need to learn a programming language to do cybersecurity? And the answer is technically no for an entry-level job, but it's going to make stuff so much easier because wherever you end up, you're going to be automating stuff. You're probably going to be scripting. Learn Python. In my opinion, it's the easiest language to learn. You can always go from there, but at least then you have the basic understanding of programming as a concept. And also it's a really common scripting language for kind of automating stuff. Python is the language of security, I'm seeing in the chat. Learn how to use Git too. Yes, very valid. Do that. I didn't for a really long time. And Kara says risk ruins friendships, which is true. There are certain board games you should not play with your loved ones. What's your favorite free toolkit or program? Honestly, okay, just because it's fun, Stag Hide. So for those unfamiliar, steganography is the art of hiding data basically within other data. And that's typically, hiding a written message in a photo or piece of audio, or, hiding another photo inside a photo. I don't think it's used much in real life except for watermarking, but it's a really common, fun aspect of Capture the Flags. Finding a picture of a cat and there's a secret password inside it. It's fun. Who doesn't want to feel like a secret agent? It's a cool tool. Something worth mentioning that I don't think I covered earlier is one of the reasons why I recommend setting up Kali Linux if you haven't already is, although there's a lot of free tools that are now available on Windows, most of the free cybersecurity tools originated, on Linux, and they have, in my opinion, the best interfaces there, or, better command line interfaces. Most of the cybersecurity tools that you want are going to be found, at least first on Kali Linux. Or any Linux for that matter. While I wait for another question, I'm just going to cover, because I've been asked in the past, and I think it's a really valid question, what do you do if you want to get into cybersecurity? Because obviously everyone comes at it at a different level. And I would say, if you're coming at it knowing nothing, don't worry about cybersecurity. Learn the basics of how a computer works. Learn networking. Learn what an OS is. Learn how things are stored. You need that knowledge before you can do anything else. Just get that. If you've got that basic understanding, in my opinion, learn a programming language. It's just an essential skill. And you'll find that some entry-level jobs require that level of understanding of programming and how stuff works, but they don't actually need you to know cybersecurity concepts yet. They're happy to teach you that. Finally, once you have those basics down, go and learn cybersecurity. I mentioned Mike Myers's Security Plus course on YouTube, I think, that's free. I'd say that's a useful resource for anyone wanting to learn the theory of cybersecurity. And I do think it's important to learn the theory. Technically, you could get a cybersecurity job not knowing any of the theory and just being good at the tools. But that's not going to get you anywhere. That's not going to get you far in the industry. It's like, in theory, someone could fix a car without knowing how a car works, but life's going to be harder, right? Learn how it works. It gives you so much better understanding and power over the tools that you have. What was the theory resource? So I'm just recommending as a free resource I used is the Mike Myers YouTube Security Plus series. It's to prep people for the Security Plus CompTIA certification. But I think it's just a nice resource. He's a cool guy that communicates stuff quite clearly, and he just goes through the basics of like, what is encryption? What is asymmetric encryption? What kind of threat actors are there? Just when you get into cybersecurity, you're going to see hundreds of acronyms. There's so many, and he's helpful in, getting started there. Also, platforms like TryHackMe and Hack the Box do have free educational labs. I think Hack the Box Academy is not very accessible from a free perspective because they make you, it's like you have to buy cubes and then spend your cubes and stuff. It's weird. TryHackMe is a bit better from that perspective. There are so many resources out there. I mean, if you're really just starting out, look at like a GCSE computer science textbook resources. Just, there's stuff out there. There's no pressure to buy really expensive stuff. There's a bunch of recommended resources in the chat for anyone that wants to see some more. If I meet neurodivergent people at university or work, how can I best support them and be an ally? So one of the things that I found working and studying as a neurodivergent person is people are ready to help you, but it can get pretty tiring constantly having to ask. Like, it's always assumed that you're fine and you have to put your hand up and say, actually, I need help. Actually, I'm struggling. Nothing comes to mind immediately, but having conversations with people, and not making the assumption that they're going to come to a security conference, or not making the assumption that they've fully followed everything, in an audio presentation. I know it's ironic because it's what I'm doing right now, but I cannot sit and listen to someone talking for an hour. I can't do it. At university, I had special access measures, so my lectures were recorded. I could barely sit through those. Oh my God, I'm not suited for university. And I think just recognizing that, it can be tiring to constantly say, actually, I can't do that. And just coming at people with the attitude of like, rather than we are going to do this, it's like, hey, if you feel up to it, could we do this? Or, how do you feel about that? Just that kind of open language that means we're not constantly having to disagree or feel difficult. What talent will be needed in cyber in 5 to 10 years time? Oh my God, I don't know. Something that comes to mind, and we've been talking about this for years and years and years, and it's always 10 years away. It's always 10 years away, is quantum computing, right? When quantum computing finally happens, cryptography as we know it is screwed. How we secure information on the internet is screwed. So when quantum computing comes about, I imagine being involved in cryptography will be a very interesting time. It will be possibly a very lucrative field if you can figure out a solution. But yeah, that's the thing that everyone always says is coming in 10 years time, is quantum computing. I'm just going to scroll up again. Why is it that Apple is more secure than other platforms? Okay, so this is actually a really fun, I wouldn't call it a misconception. I just think it's interesting, right? So there's this perception that Apple doesn't get hacked. If you have an iPhone, it's secure. In a couple ways, that's true, right? So for example, Apple is much stricter about what apps are uploaded to its store. Google Play, what they do, at least last time I checked, is anyone can upload an app, and then if it's malicious, it gets taken down. Whereas Apple supposedly has a look if it's malicious before it lets you upload. It's a bit stricter in that respect. Secondly, Apple devices are they offer the user much less control. They're a bit more idiot proof, which means it's harder to make really dumb security errors. And also it means that you as a user, even an administrative user, have less control over what you can access within your own device. The reason why Windows Defender is seen as super insecure and Apple is seen as secure is Windows is much more like ubiquitous, especially when it comes to like businesses with lots of data. Historically, you'd use Windows. You wouldn't, at least my understanding, I wasn't alive before 2000, but my understanding was that MacBooks were less used for that kind of big data handling stuff. And so there was less reward to hacking Apple, because, the most lucrative thing to hack is the big business. They have the big money and the big resources. And so if all those big businesses are using Windows and using specifically Windows Defender, because that is the antivirus that comes with the platform, that's the thing you focus on finding vulnerabilities for. So it's not that Apple has less vulnerabilities, it's that people don't spend as much time looking for them, so fewer are found. Do I need antivirus to be secure on the internet, or is my Windows Defender enough? Possibly controversial, but I honestly think Windows Defender is enough now. It has this reputation of being super insecure, and I've just explained why that is, right? But I think these days it's probably okay for the average person. I don't use it, but I can be a hypocrite. And yes, I agree. All I see is a letter S, but with S in the chat, we're definitely seeing more Mac malware nowadays, because I think MacBook use is growing. There's more reasons to be putting time and energy into researching that. So we've hit 7 o'clock. I'm pretty sure I was only meant to go on for an hour, so I apologize for overrunning. Unless I see any more questions, I'll probably wrap up. Thank you everyone who showed up today. I really appreciate that. I hope I was helpful. Please reach out to me on Discord. I'm always open to chat. If you are someone trying to get into cybersecurity, reach out, because we are always looking for testers for our platform. We want to know the pain points of the cybersecurity application process, and we'd love to work with you, on how to get our platform to be the best that it can be. Agent 47, I will reach out to you after this. So yeah, thank you so much, guys. If just to end this meeting, if I could say anything, it would be reach out to people. There's so many amazing cybersecurity professionals who are friendly, nice people who want to help. If you can, go to cybersecurity conferences. People are friendly. Once again, people will help. Every time I've gone to or spoken at a cybersecurity conference, I've had like 5-6 people come up to me and say, hey, I like what you're doing. How can I support you? It's an amazing community. Make use of it. Make use of the free resources. It can feel a little bit hopeless sometimes with how harsh the cyber job market is, but that's changing. We're working on changing that at the moment. Things can only get better. And just keep looking. Okay, thank you so much.